It's Nolan.
Now, before we get started, make sure y'all hitting that like button. Make sure y'all sharing it on your respective platforms. Let somebody know what we're doing today. Now, let's get into the show.
So many things that I could say inside a rap, but they would never understand me. Niggas still talking about Grammys, but that ain't feeding my family. Must be living under rocks if you don't see the vision. How was 16, creasing linen, eating Mrs. Winners. Peep the biscuit when they aiming they shots. That minor fame, fakers naming they blocks. I took a rain check, chain check, accumulate change. Everything is in abundance in my circle of range. They got me purging my pain. Used to wake up in cold sweats to making my own vest. Was damn near homeless, sleeping on my mama couch. 2 seconds away from pulling llamas out. 2019, fulfilling dreams, took the comic route. My methods of moving, I'm peddling movements. Original man was not meant to be eating from cans. All this poverty I see, but still I reach what I can. But fuck it, soon enough about to be eating in cans. Oh, that's France, getting fancy from that raisin bran up in my pantry. You sweet as candy, need my paper long as Marcus can be. I'm Marcus Garvey, you Steve Harvey, they Steve Jobs me. They still in my steeds, but I breathe calmly. Imitations start to flatter when you get confidence in your system. The dollars start to follow when common sense is official. I hear the talk, niggas be saying my flow a throwback. Mitchell and Ness, pitching it fresh like Sandy Koufax. Fuck around, somebody get shot. Lost lives, homies lost wives, glossed eyes crying like March of Dimes. I've been offline, building my character with my narrative. They say I changed, I just made room like it's the Sheridan.
What's going on, beautiful people? It's the kid J Nolan here. Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Industry, your number one source for music, entertainment, commentary, and breakdowns. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Now, in this video, we're going to be reacting to a new video from FD Signifier, which has been taking the hip-hop commentary space by storm. All right, and the video is hip-hop has an age problem, kinda. All right, and this video went up on his secondary page, Signified B-Sides, if I'm not mistaken, that's the name of it. And I've seen a couple of other folks in the space. I've seen Open Mike Eagle. He has a video talking about it. I didn't really go all the way into it because I want to have my own perspective. I saw Sean C. Live talking about it. I seen the homie Dog Ninja on Twitter talking about it. So I'm like, yo, let me go find this video and see what people are talking about and what is it about this so-called age problem that's got people debating, right? Now, I think hip hop has always had an age problem before I even get into what it is that he's saying, because hip hop was allegedly supposed to be a young man's game at once upon a time. And now the guys who were originators are now the elders. So at some point, inevitably they were going to age. A lot of people felt like they would have to age out of hip hop or age out of, wanting to be received well from the public as they age. But to say there's an age problem when we're having kind of a renaissance of elder statesmen, or just people in general being able to like put music out and be revered for it on the merit of the music and being able to, outreach to the proper foundations and publications. But again, I'm going to go ahead and pull up FD Signifier's video to take in his points. I'll say where I agree, I'll say where I disagree, but nowhere in this video will I be disrespecting him, because I do respect his perspective as a voice in this space.
A few weeks ago, the Clips released their 5th studio album, Let God Sort 'Em Out, and their first album in nearly 15 years, to critical and commercial acclaim. And after a week or two of discourse, I made a video about how I had mixed feelings about the fact that arguably the most critically acclaimed, attention-grabbing rap album of the year was made by two men older than me. That video never made it to YouTube. And it didn't make it for mostly good reasons. A lot of what I had to say in this video, I'm going to low-key repeat in this one. But right after that video was finished, I saw a video from my problematic nephew, Dom, where he continued his smoke demon phase toward the generation before him, agreeing with my overall opinion, but also adding some things to the story that I knew I wanted to touch on, and I didn't know if I touched on perfectly. Before I could add anything to the video, I ended up taking a trip to LA for some business and ended up connecting with who I would say is the godfather of modern hip hop journalism and content creation, the Company Man. And my conversation with him really helped me see that my initial take was inadequate. So the following is a result of my thoughts influenced by two, what I would say, powerful voices in hip hop criticism from relatively opposing sides from the generational and artistic divide. And using those angles, I want to discuss why I think we're at a pivotal crossroads for hip hop and music culture in general. So let's talk about Let God Sort 'Em Out and why that album is so interesting, but also alarming. Hip hop has always been an art form that reflected the energy and attitudes of America's and eventually the world's young people. In fact, I remember vividly as a teenager joking with my friends about how weird it was gonna be when someone like Snoop Dogg got old and was still trying to rap. And mind you, old rappers are definitely doing weird shit right now. But it's not necessarily the music that's weird. In fact, the last half decade has proven that old rappers can actually still provide the genre with amazing work. Nas went on a generational run coming out of COVID that rivals anything he's ever done as an artist. Jay Electronica oddly gave the world his first album in his early 40s after over a decade of waiting. Artists like A$AP Rock, Billy Woods, and even Killer Mike have all given the world numerous excellent projects in the last few years, while all in their mid to late 40s. And of course, probably the first to show that this was possible was Jay-Z back in 2017 at 444 when he was 48 years old.
And y'all know I'm a Jay-Z truther on this channel. Just lends even more credibility to what it is that I be saying. At 48, he dropped a pivotal album, and people didn't even look at it really from the lens of a 48-year-old man, because I think Jay-Z is just so implemented into our psyche collectively as hip hop. Even if he's not your favorite or he's not somebody that you follow or listen to on the reg, he's still implemented into the very fabric and the fiber of what hip hop is, where it can go, and what it's been for the past 2 decades plus. Right? So I think he definitely has set the example. I believe Kendrick Lamar even said 444 was an example for him prior to going into the Mr. Morale album. So again, whether you like him or not, his impact is felt even by the people that you love. If you love this Clips album, they give nothing but adoration and reverence, not only to Jay-Z as a person as they work with him, but even as an artist. The only person Pusha T had on his bucket list years ago was Jay-Z to collaborate with. They've done multiple songs together now. So again, just had to get that in there.
Now, one difference is the fact that unlike a lot of other old rappers, the Clips are still rapping about selling drugs, being rich, and killing people. And I love it. We all loved it. It's great. And if you think about it, it's no more relatable to a person like me when I was younger than it is when I'm older. So it's just good, fun entertainment. But also in between those drug bars, we get amazing moments about aging with hip hop and in the spotlight, gaining perspective through experience, losing parents. All this to say, as much as I love him, Andre 3000, you are wrong. There is a lot of room for older people in hip hop. Teray, another hip hop journalism elder, said as much a while back. However, I still have concerns when I see the rollout and reception for Let God Sort 'Em Out, not in terms of its success, but in terms of galvanizing the culture, drawing attention, and driving trends and conversations, being a moment in hip hop in a way that I don't know if it's happened enough in the last decade or so. Because while I think there's plenty of room for older rappers in hip hop, any genre of art that is dominated by people in their 40s going into their 50s, especially a genre that used to be driven by younger people. The aforementioned Nas, for example, was 19 when he made Illmatic, and the aforementioned Andre 3000 along with Big Boy, they were both 19 when Outkast released Southern Playlist of Cadillac Funky Music. If the only people really engaged with hip hop culture as a music culture and not a drama culture, and we'll get to that later, if those people are all pushing 40 and older, that means hip hop is dying, or at least that it's not in a healthy place. As much as I love Kendrick Lamar's current reign of dominance.
Before we get into Kendrick Lamar, I don't know how I feel about the notion that because the people that gave us classic albums 25, 30 years ago are now aging perhaps what some may feel is aging out. Even some artists themselves may feel like they're aging out. I think it's a bit of an overstatement, very large overstatement, to say that hip hop is dying because of that. Like there's no influence to come up after it. I think overall there's a disconnect though, and it's not on the artist, right? It is partially on the artist, to be fair. But I think as fans, we also have to be able to see who the artists are that have the remnants of what it is that we loved about these elder statesmen, and collectively support those people. You know what I'm saying? That's why there's this conversation around people like Jid, and it's like, you know, is he going to be able to make that leap from the next best thing to being the best thing? Is he the candidate? You know what I mean? And if he's not, then who is, right? Of the let's say 35 and under club, of who's the next person that we can get behind to carry the torch. And I don't know if there's anyone out there that's received that overwhelming support. I think that a lot of it is fragmented, but I think hip hop isn't dead, because hip hop, at some point, I believe it was projected that hip hop would just go back underground. So there's also that. It will never die, but will it always be this mainstream top 40, top 20, top 10 Billboard Global 200 thing? Hot 200 thing? Or will it scale back some? I don't know. But to say it's dying, I can't agree with that.
I don't know if there's ever been a time where the biggest star in hip hop has been in their late 30s. Drake's most dominant run in the 2010s, he was in his mid 20s. Kanye and Wayne before him were in their mid and late 20s. Jay-Z was maybe the first to do this.
And as he brought up Kanye ruined himself. Let's be clear. Kanye could have done this as long as he wanted. Kanye could have been, for lack of a better term, the next Jay-Z figure, right? Artistically different, perspective-wise different. All of those, there's many differences between himself and Jay, but Kanye was perfectly primed to be the successor to Jay-Z's so-called throne, right? Which is why they did Watch the Throne together, because they were sharing the throne. But Kanye ruined it himself for whatever reason, you know what I mean? And you could say it's for mental health reasons, medical situations, but I just think overall, the music just got lazy, and he stopped pushing boundaries, and the boundaries that he wanted to push were more so on a socio-political level rather than challenging himself musically. I think he's just, you know, but the door was there. Kanye at 35 was still in a very solid position to run rap as long as he chose to, had he not chosen to be a fuck nigga. We'll continue.
In his 30s and the late 90s during his most dominant run, but he had been around since his mid 20s. And before that, Biggie, Tupac, Lauryn Hill, Missy Elliott, Run DMC, LL Cool J, and so on. These were all very young men and women becoming superstars and affecting significant change and impact on hip hop culture, making iconic work at that time. It's not that it's not happening now, is that the way it's happening is not where it needs to be. Now, I want to be clear that I'm using the word iconic for a reason, because I'm about to give maybe my hottest take in a while to point out a paradox happening in hip hop. I'm not saying that there are no young rappers making good music right now in 2025 or in the past decade or so. In fact, I think that hip hop music as a whole is the best it's ever been, and this includes younger rappers. Now, I know this is something that people my age would disagree with, but that's because they're probably less locked in than I am, and y'all know I'm not nearly as locked in as I used to be once upon a time. And part of that is because there's honestly too much good hip hop coming out these days. There's a new rap girl with a ratchet banger every 3 weeks. There's a new Griselda project every 2 months. There's an entire genre of female MCs making more purist boom bap adjacent music like Chica and Lil Sims and No Name. There's entire catalogs of good music from younger artists like Denzel Curry or Vince Staples that I don't get to spend enough time with. Because the reason is one of y'all are bringing to my attention someone like Mike, who I haven't listened to yet because I don't know when I'm going to do that, because I just heard the new McKinley Dixon project, and that is to me my favorite thing that's came out all year.
All right, I'm gonna pause this for a moment because I wanna go back to his point about people like the No Names, the Denzel Currys, and unfortunately, I think the divide that we're experiencing and talking about right now is nothing new, unfortunately, because the divide was happening when these artists were first making their rounds, right? Because now the Denzel Currys of the world, the No Names of the world, are in their early to mid 30s. But if you go back into their history, they've actually been out over a decade, right? So that means that they've already put 10 years in the hole, possibly have already had their biggest moments. I don't know where their career is going to go moving forward or how they will evolve artistically or, in a way that perhaps could have more commercial success. But on the surface, it looks like they may have already had their peak, and they're still relatively on the smaller side of fandom. And I think that's because a lot of us missed the boat when they were coming out, when they were new, when they were fresh. You know what I'm saying? I know this because I was listening to these artists. I was listening to the Chance the Rappers, the Vic Menses, the No Names, that whole Chicago movement, Saba, the whole Pivot Game, all the motherfuckers back in 2013 was fire. You get what I'm saying? But here we are in 2025, and we're still trying to make some of these people happen because the audience who was attached to the Nas's, the Jay-Z's, and so forth, the Kanye's, didn't necessarily convert into becoming fans of that next generation of people who were influenced by them. I feel like I missed a lot of opportunity based on that because I was very derivative of my influences, and you would think, okay, you would choose the next round of people to fulfill those shoes. But overall, the public didn't do that. The public, for the most part, I gotta be honest, went with Drake, went with the Migos, and the underlings of that movement, the 21 Savages, the Young Thugs, the Gunners, right? On a mainstream level. And then every now and then you would have something else. But yeah, the people missed the boat, and now we're suffering for it. Even if you look at the Larry Junes of the world, who have kind of galvanized a fan base in the last 5 years, I remember the 5 years before that when Larry June was coming up out of Atlanta with the 2-9 crew and people like that. And, I think he went back home to LA or wherever he's from, West Coast, Cali, and then, cultivated a sound, a movement within that thing, and it took off. But for a minute, folks wasn't rocking with him. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of names that are out here, but I think when they were primed to become that next era, the audience didn't make the choice, unfortunately.
Then I find out that dude has 5 other albums that I've never heard, and this is all while Let God Sort Him Out is still in heavy rotation. If you're my age and you're paying attention and you're honest, you have to admit there simply wasn't this much high quality stuff coming out in the 90s, because the way we consumed hip hop, the people that controlled how hip hop was released, would not have allowed it. But that's also part of the issue. Hip hop music is in a second renaissance right now, but hip hop culture is kind of trash. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Many of them have to do with the mediums through which we consume music. Streaming has changed the nature of engaging with the music and has also exacerbated how exploitative being a rapper is, as rappers make even less money off their music today than they did 30 years ago. Where they were getting at least pennies off each record, and now it's a percentage of a penny off each stream. And this has led to a big difference in how rappers might be motivated to make music. And you know what, I'm gonna be lazy and just like add a section from that vaulted video here, because it's basically the same shit. But even going back to those stars, the Doechis, the Glorillaz, the Megs, etc., are any of them willing to put in the effort to sit and really build a project akin to Chromacopia or Let God Sort Them Out, or maybe whatever Jid and Joey Badass are doing?
All right, so pardon me for cracking that ice. But I just gotta say, I'm not sure why Doechii is in this question. As a matter of fact, I believe that Alligator Bites Never Heal is very much in a close kinship to Tyler, the creator's Chromacopia. I would say go listen to those two projects back to back. You'll see a lot of similarities. Texturally, subject matter wise, and even in the dexterity between rapping and singing. You know what I'm saying? So I gotta disagree with that part. Now, when you ask about Megan or Glorilla, I don't think we're gonna get a Megan 1-to-1 of a Let God Sort Them Out. I feel like they're just extremely different artists in that bracket. But I feel like for Megan fans, a lot of people felt like Act 2 was more so of that type of thing in her genre. And well, I won't even say genre, but in her wheelhouse of music. Glorilla, on the other hand, you know, I thought Glorious was cool. But I think Glow is more of a singles artist. I don't think she's an album artist, even a feature artist. And I think you always need those types of people to be out there too. I don't think everybody is supposed to have great albums. Even if you go back through the history of hip hop, there's some really talented motherfuckers who they would give you a summer jam. They give you crazy features, but maybe their solo catalog isn't all that crazy. So I'm a little more lenient on that, but we'll continue.
To be fair, does the even culture demand that from them, or is this just an outdated old head concept? Is it old head of me? I'm asking this genuinely to want more artists to sit down for a couple of years and really work on building a project, because I understand that that's not the optimal way to be a musician in 2025. Like, I don't know if any rapper has had a bigger 18 to 24 month period than Glorilla. I feel like ever since she popped up a couple of years ago, she's basically had a top 10, top 20 hit every 2 to 3 months. And somehow she came out with not one, but 2 albums in 2024, or maybe they're mixtapes. I honestly don't know. And that's kind of my thing.
Everything on the right was a mixtape. Glorious was the album. But again, you know, everybody's not paying like super close attention, maybe not watching the interviews, not keeping up with the artists as they, you know, tell you these things. But these were very much distinctions made by Glow.
It doesn't feel like it mattered that she came out with 2 albums in 1 year, and that the albums themselves didn't really make, like, as singular projects, they didn't make huge splashes, because she's still releasing big hits every couple of months. What would incentivize her to go away from that strategy and like let her wave calm down for a second and legitimately stay in the studio for a big album, hype it for months, make one big splash all at once, when she can basically just keep ruling TikTok and Instagram and whatever else with these great songs? And this is where my conversations with Company Man and Dom come in. What I began to ask is, where are the huge cultural shifting moments in the form of music coming from younger parts of hip hop? While there's still good music happening in hip hop, the stars don't seem to shine as bright. I looked at a list of the 20 hottest rappers in hip hop from 2022, and a bunch of the people on that list had already low-key fallen off, like Jack Harlow and Sexy Red. A few were people I didn't know anything about, like V's and Cash Cobain and Ken Carson. And you might say, well, that's because I'm not locked in, and to an extent.
And before we get in further in with this, I think the problem is, for a solid maybe decade, low effort music was the way to go. Right? Again, coming from that Future, and we like Future. We like these artists. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm saying that Lil Wayne, on his, pre-Carter 3, post-Carter 3, Carter 4, I'm Not a Human Being, going into singing rock music, Strange era, we got a spawn of Future, Migos, and that whole wave. The Rockstar wave was another thing that spawned into the futuristic era, which Metro Boomin is trying to recreate right now, which was not so talented rappers that were making party records for the hood. And then you got the offshoot of artists who grew up under them, who were influenced by them, and they basically said, oh, if that's all we got to do is dance and have a nice beat, I could go do that right now in my bedroom or go to my homeboy house and record in his closet. And then that became the more acceptable thing because that was what mainstream music became sound-wise. So when you start looking at this list and you look at the people like a Sexy Red or a Cash Cobain or a Boss Man D-Lo who were able to pop off with a joint or two or three, but at the core of it, they're not actually good rappers. They shouldn't even be necessarily called rappers, although rapping is like a form of communication that we all understand, comes with a certain cadence and it rhymes, but they really are not masters of rapping to even carry the title. But I know that's going to sound elitist.
Maybe, but if they were really huge stars, it would be impossible for me not to know who they are. There's a few bona fide huge stars, but they were also mostly women like Meg, Glorilla, Lotto, Doja Cat, Doechii, and keep a pin in that because that's important. So aside from maybe Playboy Cardi and Lil Uzi Vert, I don't think anyone on that list has truly done anything to deeply impact hip hop culture on a large scale. There's good music, there's big hits, but there's no big galvanizing culture shifting moments. And as I showed with Glorilla in that previous segment, I don't think there's even a real reason or like force to make that a thing. As big of a year that Glorilla had, I don't think her presence right now compares to what Nicki Minaj did with Pink Friday 15.
We're not gonna do that. All due respect, brother. I respect the fuck out of you. We're not finna do that. We're not comparing Glorilla to Nicki Minaj. We have to, as a people, as a race, the human race, as decent people, we have to stop comparing the trajectory of every woman that raps to that of Nicki Minaj in 2010. We have to. We have to dead that. We have to kill that. We have to eradicate that. Clearly, Nicki Minaj doesn't even want that to happen because every woman who comes close to it or even encroaches or hell, catches a fire moment, she has issues with. So we need to understand that Nicki Minaj was the chosen one of her time period, and she was able to dominate for nearly a decade, all by herself. Whole open freeway. She could swerve left, right. She could stop in the middle of the road with no worries of anybody running into her bumper. We cannot compare anyone from this era where we have 80,000 women that rap, and we have at least a solid 25 to 30 current ladies relevant in rap. They may not be chart topping, but they're relevant. And that's where you get into like the Kim Demands and all of them, right? The Monaleos, the Rico Nasties, and then some of the even lesser talented ones that have a fan base like Caribou or Anicia. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of relevant female rappers who are all or just like a hit away from being, and they already got fan bases and shit like that. She did not have to compete in that type of field. People like to make battle rap parallels. Who the fuck was Nicki Minaj going to battle rap on some Queen of the Ring shit? She would have literally had to go to Queen of the Ring, which she didn't. So we gotta let that go. We have to separate ourselves. Nicki Minaj, musically and pop wise, is a legend and an icon. And it's okay to let her stay there. Everyone else that came after her are more like Cardi B than Nicki Minaj. They're more like Megan Thee Stallion than Nicki Minaj. This isn't the concept of the video, but we have to part ways with her being the gold standard of women that rap when she was able to do it by herself. Whether it was good or bad music, it was pushed to the world.
Years ago. And I was old then. I wasn't locked in then, but I could tell from looking at the youth and from looking at the culture that something was happening when she came out. And it's not the same. People now are just satisfied with small mini waves in different pockets of fandom. And that's not the worst thing, because that also does mean we get better, more niche content. But it does mean that hip hop is lacking star power, or at least young star power, which is concerning, because that's what drives the medium and the culture forward into the future beyond when I'll have any influence. There's a lot of obvious aspects of why this is happening: late capitalism and enshittification of music streaming and how we consume music. But the company man added something else that I definitely want to touch on to oversimplify our conversation. Justin, I invite you to add your commentary to this when you can. He pointed out that essentially Gen Z doesn't have the best critics who are also popular and influential in the culture in the same way that me and him and others above us and older than us were while we were consuming hip hop. The reality is that the popular figures who promote and discuss music that is Gen Z oriented are, for lack of a better word, pretty shallow. So before you take offense to that, young people, let me explain. Back in my day, hip hop journalism was a real thing. That's where Justin came from. Teray, Sway, Funkmaster Flex, Joe Claire, Fab Five Freddy, Heather B, and a bunch of other names that a lot of you are like, who the fuck is this nigga talking about? But if you're around my age, that was a little nostalgic, hit to the brain. These were the talking heads of my time. And while they weren't as in-depth or as analytical as maybe a Justin and many of my peers are today, they were still seriously engaged with criticism and discussion of hip hop. They inspired debate and discourse and admiration, and they were tastemakers that grew the culture through funneling the biggest stars to our eyes and brains and making sure that when their music happened, when their music came out, that we all sat with it instead of just consuming it as content. And
I think the main difference is there was a standard. It was something you aspired to, right? I remember when a Sway in the Morning freestyle, a Sway in the Morning interview used to be like impactful. Now I'm sure Sway done dropped an interview today that nobody cares about. I love Sway. I'm not shitting on Sway. I'm just saying, for whatever reason, the culture shifted away from valuing what a Sway thinks. But the generation before, it wasn't just that he was in depth or analytical or anything of that nature. It was, we knew Sway. We grew up with Sway from his early radio days, Sway and Tech, to MTV, to doing MTV Rap Fix. Rap Fix introduced some of everybody. Remember, Rap Fix had the Kendrick Lamars and the Black Hippies. They had Pro Era on there. They had Odd Future on there. And so many fucking others. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure Tito Lopez went on fucking Rap Fix. I'm sure, you know what I'm saying? Like a whole fucking era of rappers from 2011 to what year did that shit end? 2013-ish or some shit? It wasn't that long. But that shit meant something because you could get next to Sway. You could get next to motherfucking Nadeska. You know what I mean? You could get next to fucking Rob Markman. And that shit meant something. That was something like, oh, fuck, nigga. But once we kind of stopped taking these people's word or stopped valuing their platforms as something that actually mattered to us as artists and consumers, because artists play a role in that shit too, because artists at a certain point, post 2016, 17, said fuck interviews. So a lot of hip-hop based platforms also became devalued because the artists no longer valued having those conversations. So everybody done fucked this game up, man. I'll let them talk about Kai Cenat.
Be blunt. This is not something that a Kai Cenat or Aiden Ross or XQC or academics is doing right now. In our conversation, Company Man brought up this conflict between XQC and Anthony Fantano. And, you know, Anthony Fantano didn't like Jack Boys 2, and he did like Let God Sort Him Out, right? And his reasoning was that Jack Boys 2 felt a little shallow and uninspired. And the Company Man pointed out that whether or not you like Jack Boys 2, if you have an analytical stance on hip hop and that music specifically, you could illustrate multiple positive angles that could be made about Jack Boys 2 that would be a solid argument against what Fantano presented. So in a dream world where Anthony Fantano and the Company Man have a conversation about those albums, anyone who witnessed that would be richer from the experience of seeing two informed and experienced hip hop critics sharing an intellectual conversation where they may have disagreed. However, XQC is no Justin Hunt. SQC basically went full idiocracy on us and said, Unga Bunga, words are hard, let's vibe. It was really embarrassing. And it's incredibly embarrassing that somehow this guy is a prominent voice for Gen Z on anything, let alone hip hop. Say what you want about Anthony Fantano, but one thing you have to admit is that he's a thoughtful critic with an informed perspective, even if you don't agree with it. And Fantano has millions of subscribers across multiple platforms. I have 1 million subs across multiple platforms. Justin Hunt is pushing 400K. Curtis King is over 300K. And the hip hop podcast world is dominated by people like Joe Buttons and others who are born from the same cloth as he is. And then there's the traditional hip hop media entities like Ebro and Sway. All of those things are still around. But all of us combined pale in comparison to giants like Kai Cenat, especially when it comes to getting the attention of Gen Z. And as hard as this is to believe for those of you around my age watching, Kai Cenat is the biggest and most influential figure in hip hop right now, and definitely for the youth. And no, minimal shade to Kai. He's not who you should go for any type of substantive hip hop journalism. He's not a tastemaker. He's not providing criticism or analysis. It's mostly just antics and jokes at best. The closest thing to substantive commentary for Gen Z is probably Sean C, who's barely Gen Z because he's 29 now. And Sean C has a large following, but all the other younger oriented content media entities that I can think of that are also youth oriented are more like Kai Cenat. That whole streaming world, while I get that it's, you know, entertainment and, well, I don't get it. I don't get streaming. I don't get that world of streaming. I don't think it's directly a problem, but I know it's not serving hip hop criticism in any meaningful way. It's just a lot of young dudes having fun, which I get it. The people that are Gen Z that are doing serious commentary are much, much smaller, and they're not getting nearly the same level of attention. I mentioned Dom, who along with Four and with the Potty Mouth podcast, and they're just starting to get traction in the last couple of years. Then there's people like Top 5 Troy, who I think is pretty small. Dupley is another hip hop creator that's made some good stuff and gotten a lot of views. But beyond him, I can't think of too many hip hop channels that are doing actual journalism as opposed to just making hip hop drama commentary. And I get why those channels do numbers, because it seems like more hip hop fans are interested in drama than music. And I get why, because this generation's first images of hip hop commentary in the last decade were guys like DJ Vlad and Adam 22. That said, I can't just pin it explicitly on a failure within Gen Z, because that's our responsibility. Don points out something I've complained about for years, which is that the old guard of hip hop tastemakers are struggling with aging out of relevancy. They're struggling with change, and for the longest, too many of us have been openly hostile and dismissive of what the modern era of hip hop is about. And the consequences of this has been a severe lack of carrying on tradition. And by tradition, I don't necessarily mean a specific style of rap, but I mean the essence of what hip hop culture was supposed to be. Recognize that hip hop has always been compromised. Like from day one, go back to my Kid and Play video, as soon as the money came to rap music stopped being a radical art form. But there were at least always counter forces within the culture resisting commodification, resisting selling out, and staking a claim to that essence the entire time. And that's mostly gone now. Now the biggest, most influential faces in hip hop culture are doing commercials for Target in the middle of Target being boycotted by black people. So please believe you had issues with Snoop Dogg and Nelly performing for Trump like early this year. I can't wait to see what Kai Cenat and his homies are doing 20 years from now for, President Baby Hitler that we'll have by then, because that's a whole other conversation. I see people like Aiden Ross and SQC and worst of all academics garnering massive audiences and getting cosigns even by legitimate hip hop tastemakers. And you could never have been a serious figure in hip hop doing the things they do. And back in my day, you could never have been a serious figure in hip hop doing some of the things they do. In the 90s and 2000s, coming out and saying that you were a fan of Bush 1 or 2 or Ronald Reagan would have had you completely excised from the culture. But now we have our OGs and new age tastemakers for hip hop overtly supporting Donald Trump. How have many of these so-called tastemakers covered these black women stars? I think you already know the answer. There's a world where Meg and Doechii and others feel bigger than they do even right now if there was a hip hop media landscape more amenable for engaging with female stars. And don't get me wrong, hip hop has never been great with women from jump, but compare the way that hip hop culture received Lil' Kim and Lauryn Hill and Foxy Brown and Nicki Minaj a couple decades ago versus how people like academics and Aiden Ross treat Doechii and Meg Thee Stallion. And here's the thing. Regardless of how people my age feel about the state of hip hop culture right now, and if you feel like the youth and Gen Z and soon to be Gen Alpha is fucking up the culture, that's still our fault. And that's because for the longest time, a lot of us have been openly hostile to anything young people have been doing with hip hop. We have been incredibly uninviting to large chunks of their generation. When Kanye dropped 808s and Heartbreak, we shitted on it heavy, said it wasn't hip hop, said we were mad at Kanye for it. But that album is clearly today one of the most influential records hip hop has seen in the last 2 decades.
I stand on the soapbox of that album still ain't hip hop. The production on that motherfucker, oh baby, that shit was hard. But hip hop, no. Pop, yes, and that was his goal, because he wanted to redefine what pop was, and he did that successfully.
Lil Yachty said he didn't know much about Biggie because he was literally born a couple of months after Biggie died. We crucified him for years for that and wrote him off as if it wasn't an elder's responsibility to sit him down and play Biggie for him, because that's what adults are supposed to do.
But I thought his dad played Biggie. You know what I mean? I thought his dad managed him and was trying to tell him about all that stuff. He just didn't want to hear it. And I think that's the thing also. Like, sometimes we do be trying to mentor some of these people, but they don't want mentorship. You know what I mean? They don't want guidance. They want to sit in whatever it is that they think is lit or legit or popular among their friends. You know, sometimes you can't change the trajectory of a younger person's life by thinking you're going to impart wisdom on them if they're not willing to receive it. You know what I'm saying? It may take something else to click in their mind. I don't know what it was that clicked to Lil Yachty. I don't like Lil Yachty, but you know, in recent years, he's been trying to do more sample based hip hop. He's been, you know, he linked with J. Cole. He linked with all these different people. The nigga went and filmed a fucking whole battle rap movie years ago where he was starring in a movie battle rapping. I don't know what the fuck clicked for him to become more interested in hip hop on a broader level, but it damn sure wasn't his daddy. You know what I'm saying? His dad, I think, was trying to show him the shit from the jump.
With the youth. So when you look at the way we've engaged and managed those types of conflicts, a schism, a divide between the young and the old was inevitable. We are responsible for carrying on tradition, and we didn't do that. And like thinking about that, I have to show love to Kendrick Lamar, because even though while there's criticism for him connecting with an artist like Playboi Carti, I said then, and I better recognize now, that his goal was just to introduce a generation of fans to a style of hip hop that they haven't been involved with or invited to. Those kids were not here to listen to Good Kid, Mad City 13 years ago. Yes, Good Kid, Mad City came out 13 years ago. There's other factors we can't dismiss, right? Like, this generation has been the subject of one of the most aggressive anti-intellectualism campaigns that humanity has ever seen. Critical thinking and media literacy was basically taken out of schools deliberately by George W. Bush and Barack Obama. I'm gonna stay on that man's head until y'all understand the problem. I'm sorry if that makes you upset. I was a teacher during that time frame, and all of us knew something was wrong when we realized that absolutely nothing had changed in the way that we were supposed to be teaching when he became president. But even with that, it's still a problem that the intellectual wing of hip hop media for people under 30 seems severely underdeveloped. And I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg situation. Is it that there's not enough real critics, or is it that there's not an audience for it? That's hard to say, but I do know that it's for everyone that loves hip hop, young and old, to put in the work needed to fix it. Because when I'm 50, while it might be interesting to hear Social Security retirement bars from Nas or Jay-Z, I imagine it will make me sleep better at night knowing that some new little young nigga is taking over the game in a way that I had never seen before in my lifetime. That's what a healthy hip hop culture looks like. It's not the Clips. As much as I love that album being the face of the game right now, it should be some new nigga that we don't know nothing about doing something we never even imagined. Except Playboi Carti. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I don't know why the Clips gotta take the the brunt of the, why they gotta be the butt of the joke here. Number one, the Clips, we got behind them. They hadn't dropped an album in 16 years. So it's not like we were necessarily like, we didn't know when the shit was gonna come out. It just was a cultural moment. You can't choose cultural moments. You know what I'm saying? People chose to support, but who the fuck, where was the psychics? The psychics be predicting who gonna go to jail. They predict, you know, who gonna get caught up in a social scandal. Where the psychics at that predicted that the Clips will be one of the top fucking artists of 2025? Where them niggas at? They need a raise. Show me one of them motherfuckers who said Pusha T is finna push a ton of albums. Who the fuck predicted that? You know? So I feel like they're catching unnecessary heat. And I know he loves the album. He likes the album. He likes the Clips. He grew up on the Clips. But I feel like they're becoming like the face of, why is this happening? And it's because it was good music. And unfortunately, I think that the younger generation, their affinity for good hip hop music just is not the same. Like, when I was coming into becoming an artist and wanting to be a part of hip hop, it was understood that I had to go study the greats. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't like no older nigga coming around just knighting me with bunches of music, but even as I was rapping amongst my peers who didn't rap, they would come to me and be like, hey, man, I just listened to goddamn Reasonable Doubt today. That shit fire. You know, I never knew that shit was so fire. I don't know. Maybe my friend group was just different than some other niggas. I don't know. But we would have them conversations. I was a huge Nas and Jay fan. I didn't need to like do that, but I knew they were the benchmarks. I knew I had to go back on Biggie. I knew I had to go back, listen to Doggy Style. Like there was a certain curriculum of hip hop music that you just could not get around if you wanted to be a rapper. You know what I'm saying? You had to go listen to fucking Outkast discography. You had to know, you know what I mean? Goody Mob. Fucking Scarface. You got to go all regions with this shit. Twister. You know what I mean? Like, it was a respect. And I think that that's what the younger generation has displayed the least of, is respect and reverence for that which came before them. Because we couldn't just say, oh man, that shit old. It was, nigga, this is what you got. Big Daddy Kane, nigga. Rakim originated this style, nigga. Go do your homework. Don't come around here trying to rap. But for whatever reason, we allowed artists who came in, like he said, saying Biggie, that Biggie shit is old. That nigga died around the time I was born. I don't give a fuck about nothing he was talking about. We let people that perpetuated that type of messaging into the culture to begin with because they were black. You know what I'm saying? We just let niggas get, oh, it's a black man trying to get some money. Guess I gotta respect it. I respect the hustle. Remember the respect the hustle era? Remember when that was like a fucking term? Hey, I don't like their music, but I respect the hustle though. I respect the hustle though. Fuck your hustle, nigga. Go hustle on the street, nigga. Fuck out of here, nigga. You ain't no rapper, nigga. You ain't no hip hop, nigga. What you doing in hip hop if you ain't hip hop, nigga? Go do something else, nigga. Get your motherfucking CDL, boy. Better go learn a fucking trade. What? Better, nigga, come fix my sink. You know what I mean? And ain't nothing wrong with doing any of those things. I'm being tongue in cheek, but there's nothing wrong with those professions. You probably will make more than a lot of rappers doing those things over the course of time. So I think the discourse around what hip hop is going to be in the future, I think the clips actually contribute a very strong footnote of what hip hop can be for somebody that's younger, because they actually get to see hip hop music that is akin to the music from the 2000s, the 90s, and somewhat of an offshoot of the 80s, because that's what the 90s was. They took the foundation of what was there in the 80s and they built upon it and they innovated out of it. But you can see the pipeline from 80s hip hop to clips, which is at the top now, or at least at the top of mind, at the top of discussion, and having a very successful commercial run as well. That is the example that people have been looking for the next generation to learn from. If they're not tuned in to the DJ that don't spin or the XQCs of the world who are trying to convince us that it's not relevant. If it's not relevant, it wouldn't be successful. But there's some kids out there, you know what I mean? And maybe they're not kids. Maybe they're 19, 20 years old that are saying, nah, that Clips album is fire. That Clips album is really good. Malice might be becoming one of my favorite rappers, as he's been the star of this movement. And that is exactly what we need. Because I don't know how old Scarface is. If you would have asked me how old Scarface was in 1995, I would have said he looked like he was 40. I don't know what age he was. Hell, he might just be 50 something now, but he looked 40 in 1995. And I didn't give a fuck. When that motherfucking Smile came on, I was in that Smile. for me. Won't you smile? Won't you just smile? I knew what the fuck was going on. You must be used to unfind thing. Infatuated by what money bring. I thought that nigga was 40. And I turned that shit up. So, as long as we're perpetuating ageism in any form or fashion, we're always going to lose. And I think that, again, he's not criticizing the clips, but he's using them as like a benchmark of like, why is this happening? It should have been a younger person. I completely disagree. If there was a younger person that could do it, they would have done it.
Just give me that one. Just give me that one. Again, pulling from my combo with Company Man. Our generation is the first to age with hip hop. So us in our 40s and 50s, we're doing this for the first time, and we clearly don't have a blueprint. But we do have an example of how it can go wrong. Because when you look at rock music, that's not where I want hip hop to be. Those of you younger than me may not realize it, but there was a time back in my day that rock music was a significantly more relevant genre of music and music culture and pop culture and mainstream anything. It's like Blink-182 and System of a Down and Metallica or Aerosmith and all these other folks were just as likely to be on your TV screens and just as likely to have the equivalent of trending sounds or whatever back then. And right now, almost all of that is very niche and barely gets a blip compared to hip hop and pop and I don't know, Afrobeat or whatever else. And there's a ton of reasons why rock is invisible from wide commercial appeal, but it couldn't have helped that the old guards of rock and metal and punk acted just how some of us are acting right now, dismissive, territorial, and arrogant toward those who are supposed to inherit the culture. So unless you want this thing of ours to die with us the way it died with rock, we need to be putting in work to nurture and develop the things we love amongst the younger generation. And don't tell me they don't want to listen. That's part of the process. Neither did we, and we didn't because the people above us did not respect us. Y'all remember that even in the 90s, there were black radio stations that didn't play hip hop? Y'all remember people like Larry Blackmon, the lead singer from Cameo? This guy had the nerve to say that rappers look silly. So remember how that felt. Consider what you wanted from your elders once upon a time and give that to the youth. If not for their sake, then for the sake of hip hop. Because we all talk about a shift, right? And I'm still 50-50 on whether or not this shift is really like a thing. Because I can't believe it's a real positive change for hip hop if it's only being appreciated and engaged with by people who won't be here in a decade to carry that tradition on. I can't see it as a real win for the culture until it's joined by artists half our age and celebrated in the same way. Because otherwise, it's not a shift, it's a last hurrah. If you made it this far in the video, there's a chance you might want to hear more from that other video that's never coming to YouTube. I do talk a little bit more about clips. I get into a bunch of other stuff I can't even think about at this point. But like I said, that video is never coming to YouTube, but you can watch it in its original form on my streaming service, Nebula. Let's talk about today's sponsor, Nebula. For those
All right, shout out to FD Signifier, shout out to Signifier B-Sides, shout out to his service Nebula as well. I'm gonna go ahead and try to wrap this up. So overall, I think a lot of good points were made in this video, although I've disagreed with a lot of points, or at least how they were presented. I think he does have a good point in where things stand in hip hop, especially as it pertains to the youth and connecting with the older generation. I don't think there's actually any barriers between the youth and the older generation today in terms of actual hip hop, right? I think a lot of the rappers of the past, I would say 20 years, have been pretty open to what it is that the young artists are doing. The previous when we started getting into the 2010s, 2015s, the elder rappers before then, they weren't ready. Folks from the 80s and 90s, they weren't ready. But I think the artists that are more of the 2000s and up time period, they understand I can't dominate forever. I'm going to go get my money. I'm going to go tour. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to go overseas a few times per year. I'm going to drop a song or something. I'm going to get into other business ventures. You know, they found other ways to diversify their portfolio in a way that they understand I can't be the hot fresh motherfucker, right? A lot of them accepted that. But it also takes not only them being receptive to the new generation, but the new generation has to have a level of respect for that which came before them. You know what I mean? And until that happens, until they're open-minded about what it is that came before them, then the outreach can't happen. Because just because an older nigga reach out to you don't mean that you're going to give a fuck what he's talking about. I was that person. What? What are you talking about? You don't know what the fuck going on. Nigga, this is my era. So that's how I see it. You know, if somebody wants to come up, what's the young man coming out of New Orleans that Kendrick co-signed? I think he about 16, 17? Lareezy. You know what I'm saying? I had to go look him up. I know him, but his name wasn't striking me at the time. The Lareezys of the world, like, he actually respects hip hop. He respects what came before him. Therefore, he's trying to pattern himself based on the tenets of what was laid. You know what I mean? We need more of that. And that's what's going to make the younger generation or an artist from the younger generation more unique. And if someone can take it and display that from that generation, others will follow, because trends happen and people follow trends. And if good rapping becomes a trend, others will try to get down with it. And I don't think it's something that is going to be massively followed, but those that tap into it eventually will find success and have a blueprint of how to be successful. So, do I think hip hop is on the way out? No. Do I think hip hop is dying? No. Do I think just because a lot of the elder statesmen that are still producing music are in their 50s, even though they're, you know, having moments? I think we're always going to have elder statesmen with moments. Young Dro, I mean, ain't he down there 40? He's the fucking star of Metro Boomin's new album. Metro Boomin is just what, 30? You know what I mean? So I think as long as there's a stage to be set, people that are seasoned are always going to shine. That's the difference. If you're not a master, as I alluded to at the top of the show, if you're not mastering your craft, you're not going to be able to foster long-term longevity for yourself. So you can have a hit, you can have a flash in the pan, you can have a moment. Are you going to have a career? It's two very different things, two very different aspirations, and two very different workloads that go into sustaining it. You know what I mean? So, again, much love and respect to FD Signifier. Not here to shit on this video at all, because I think we share more perspectives than not. But I think in the context of the way this was presented, I do disagree in a couple areas. All right. Let me know what y'all think of this down below in the comments. I was not expecting to be here for an hour, but these types of discussions do deserve long form rather than short. So hopefully people are hearing me. And when it comes to mentorship, right? Let's keep in mind, Public Enemy, Chuck D was in his 30s when he popped off, damn near mid 30s. And you know what? He took Tupac under his wing. He took Queen Latifah, Naughty by Nature, under his wing. Showed them how to tour. Showed them how to conduct themselves on tour and be professionals. You know what I'm saying? So that's another thing. Is you have to be open to this shit. Tretch and Tupac was literally carrying bags. They wasn't on stage. They were roadies carrying bags, learning from Queen Latifah and Public Enemy and them. And they had to put a year in the hole learning. You got to be willing to learn too. You know what I mean? So again, let me know what y'all think down below in the comments about where this beloved art form that we all convene here to talk about on a daily basis is going. All right, I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one. Y'all be good out there. Peace.
King of my city and cul-de-sac. Coming out swinging like soldier rags. Leading my people like quarterback. But I study this shit on my almanac. Had to get up and grind. Knowledge is booming, I'm here to apply. Came with the chip and the dip, it just single the mind. We finna do more than survive. I need my check. Spinning the block for the Gouda. We hitting the jeweler to flood out the net. We don't do beef on computers, I'm straight out the sewer. We come when you rest. Niggas be looking perplexed, so keeping my foot on their neck. No map, I trust my gut for the quest. But drama, I'm fully abreast. I was ready for years and they doubted me. All of a sudden they tell me they proud of me. I've been dropping these haters like calories. Cross them out, I came back with some boundaries. Stand for my honor, but too raw, no corner. Packing the stick with a drummer. Wanna catch my bad, won't fumble. I done came too far to be humble.